And I know other people who've gotten, 50 or 100 cards and they never opened any of them because it was too painful. They didn't even open them after a whole year, they still had them. So people are different in how they respond to that. And then another thing that's a burden, I think, on people who are grieving is that feeling that they have to respond to everybody who bought a dish, to share or did something for them. They are thinking about, oh no, I have to go buy thank you notes and I have to write to 100 people. That's sometimes something that they could use help with, even if someone addresses the envelopes for them, or it helps them feel they don't have to respond to every single thing immediately. So.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And if as a community we could develop that expectation that a mourner doesn't have to respond to any letter, that would be, hopefully take some of the burden off people, that would be great. It's actually one reason why I sometimes refrain from sending a card, because I don't want people to feel that need to respond. Or if anything, I write on the card, please, no response necessary. But the benefit of cards or written communication is that it gives the mourner the option, which is nice, to connect or not to open it. So it is, I think, quite a useful way of expressing your care. And gives the mourner that option. Yeah, and your point is really well taken, though, Anne. That the indebtedness that people feel when all this is being done for them, all this food and all this care, that can be overwhelming. And so the giving anonymously does help with that. So they don't know that it's you. That is to their benefit. So if that's ever possible, I definitely encourage that. Yes.
Because we're dealing with COVID, can you speak to how people who are mourners can really, be able to mourn in what we would consider a normal way? Anybody who's had a loss during this time has not had the opportunity to have the normal shivas and mourning process and having people come and really support that other than probably close family. So I don't know, in your practice, if you've seen people express differences related to COVID.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question. The question is, in times of COVID, is there differences now with the grief process because of restrictions and such? And I think the answer is absolutely. There's some not being able to have a funeral with people together, I think is another loss for people, not to have that opportunity, not to be able to go through the ritual of the burial and symbolically say goodbye in that way is a loss as well. I think it's complicated, and I think that we're kind of a new territory when it comes to COVID and loss. But I can tell you that it has made it hard for people to share, in that social element of the process, and that's where a lot of processing happens. People can journal and they can come see me, but if they don't have those get-togethers with people and they're not able to toast their loved one or talk about them, that makes it harder to really go through what a person must be experiencing, and I think it takes longer than to grieve because of COVID, and I think it's you feel fresh longer is what I'm seeing. So call them, reach out to them, try to accommodate the best you can to compensate. But yeah, it's harder.
Daniel, there's a question on in the chat and a couple things. Stay where you are or even closer to the Zoom bar, because where you are, the sound of you is much, much better. But Francis Apaznik had a question that was, as soon as I find it, it was the matter of when you go into a Shiva home, you're usually supposed to have the people the mourners speak first. And the Jewish tradition suggests that upon entering a house of grief, one should wait for the mourner to speak first. What is your take on this? And when you do get questions from the people present, always please repeat them. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Deb, for your help with all this. Well, not speaking when you first enter the home gives the mourner the chance to be able to, make the experience what they want it to be and to be authentic themselves. It doesn't put any preconditions on how to respond or how to be, which I think is extremely valuable. If it causes the mourner anxiety, if it causes the mourner to feel really stressed, then I think there could be some benefit to saying hello and it's nice to see you, something general, without bringing one's own emotion or focus to the conversation. Just kind of introduce yourself. I think is helpful. If a person seems to be feeling anxious or really stressed. Otherwise, I think it's a useful practice. If as long as it doesn't cause them even more discomfort than they're already feeling.
I would just add that we're coming into a really disorienting place, a place where people are very disoriented. And so it can be very awkward for everybody involved when you come in ready to have the mourner speak first and the mourner doesn't say anything. And what I want to say is that's okay. Somebody just died and was buried. And nothing is really normal. Nothing feels comfortable right now. We're doing our best. That also doesn't mean that you've committed some sort of a sin if you say, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. So you said it. You have to perceive the cues that you're getting in the interaction that you're having. And so what you don't want to do is feel like you have to come and have a whole script. But if you feel like, based on the relationship that you have, that the person sitting before you is just begging for somebody to say something and they don't know what, you can just say, I'm sorry. If you feel like you're offering something to help. Or you can say to yourself, this is awful. Right? Somebody died and it's so sad and I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna sit here and be with this person. And can you imagine how awful it must be to not have any words? That's something to hold and to witness and to just give over to and know that we will be okay. We came to sit with them, and that's what we're doing. Yeah.
And I agree with you, Rabbi. And it's more important to approach the situation than it is to remove oneself from the situation because of feeling stressed of not having the right word. The right word is less important than it is being there and being authentic yourself if that's how you feel.
Right. And the other side of that is that those who are mourning, we don't want them to feel like they need to get up and say, oh, thank you for coming, right? That's not part of this. Of course we came. Of course we came. And so, when we come in quietly and just sit without giving the vibe of expectation, we relieve the burden of going into that role of everything's fine and I'm hosting you. Welcome to my home. Thank you so much. Which is what's coming up in the, oh, thank you for coming. Even though we know that it's not normal. It puts us into a different way of being, which takes us out of the fact that we're sitting Shiva and we might not want to be about our relationship with that person at that moment. We might want to, we might not. And so it's about not really having any expectation. And when we come in quietly, then we create more of a canvas to try to read how we might be helpful.
What's the response to thank you for coming?
Jamie has a great response I'll offer, and then I'm gonna get off this bima. Jamie says often when she's thanked, of course. And I think that's a good response in this situation, of course. It's not you're welcome, it's not, oh, you do it for, just of course, right? And then take the attention off of that.
Ron Diamond has a question. He said, your very excellent talk is in the context of a proposed change in our customs concerning Shiva and encouraging people to come and stay during Shiva. Given that different people will need different things, how do we adjust our community customs to the need of each person? And again, when we hear responses, you guys, your volume is much better. Just speak slowly. Thank you.
Do you want to take this one, Rabbi?
So yes, we want to take something we do with so much love and so much care and do it even better by expanding a repertoire of ways to be present with those who are grieving. That may mean all different kinds of things. And so what we want to do is take away the barriers that keep us from a range of possibilities. Not just for a particular mourning family, but even for a particular day or time within that day. One of the barriers that we create for ourselves comes out of a place of great love, which is that we set a very large table and we fill it with food that people bring out of the goodness of their hearts. And many of us grew up knowing you never go empty-handed to a Shiva. And there's wisdom in that. That's very, very ancient because we must provide for the mourners. The trick and what we will work on together as a community in the sessions that come from now and partly behind the scenes, which I can give you some sense of, is how to provide for the mourners in healthy, nourishing, good ways and not place them in the role of needing to feel like they're hosting and that there's so much food there that they can't possibly deal with, and that the attention has been diverted from them when they may actually have needed the attention. And the dissonance of having a social gathering, however quiet people are trying to be, while others are in the depth of a profoundly sad time. So each one is different. One of the things happening behind the scenes is that we have been developing some plans so that when there is a death, we can provide meals for the family or the person who's grieving, bring them, and if they like, serve them at times when they can sit down and eat quietly, and they can eat what they want to eat according to their dietary preferences and regulations and all of that. And they may feel like when people come to their home, they just want it simple. They'd like to make sure there's water. Or they might say, I just can't have people in my home without something out. Okay, we can take care of that. That's okay. So I wanna, there's so much more for us to converse about the logistics of this. But what I wanna say as the rabbi who's driving this is two things. One is that the laws that surround our customs of caring for mourners and going through the experience of mourning, like all of our laws, are designed, I believe, to help us thrive in a world where we exist together with others and with the world itself. And so I'm less concerned with the letter than with the law accomplishing or the practice accomplishing something that's healthy and nourishing and will help the people who need to be helped. Okay? So it's not about, well, that's probably enough to say about that part of it. And I forgot what the second thing was. Okay. But it's really important that we understand that this is not about we're doing something wrong, it's not halachic. That's not how I feel. That's not what this is about. What this is, oh, I remember the second thing. What this is about is that we have people mourning in this community who, when I ask people to remember that this is a sad occasion and to please tone down the socializing, they approach me afterward and they say, Rabbi, we didn't know what to do. Thank you so much. We really needed that. Some people need a household full of community sound. It's life affirming and they need that then. For some people, it just puts them over the top. It takes a really, really difficult situation and creates a problem on top of it. And so I'm telling you this because we're all at these shivas with a full heart. We came because we care. We came to help, and everyone knows that, including the mourners. But we need to be able to respond with a wider range of tools. That's what it's about.
And Fran, I see your comment here about, I think this depends on the personality style of the mourner. I totally agree. And we should operate the way the mourner feels is most helpful for them. And I hear this other comment here, the verse that I was so glad, from Louise, that people showed up and not so much saying so was authentic to me. If people had just sat silently, I would have freaked out. Yeah, no, so if a mourner wants there to be socializing, they want people to talk, they want people to laugh, then we need to do that. That's what they want, and that's what we should do. And I think it's okay to ask the mourner, what style of evening, do you want this to, what style do you want this to be in the Shiva house tonight? I remember hiding in my bedroom because there was a party downstairs. People were laughing, there were so many people there, there's food, and I didn't feel like being at a party. So that happens too. So we really have to take our cues from the mourner and ask them those questions and try to enable that for them. Yes, Anne.
We're talking about nourishing the mourner with food and comfort and friends, but chances are that they've been up all night, one night or many nights, and a place, if they have a house full of relatives and friends from out of town, there's no time to sleep. So somebody to make sure that if they want to, they can take a break and go take a nap or get a restful amount of sleep will help them cope a lot better. But that's something that often gets left out. They're just so sleep deprived, it's a big problem for most people.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Anne's bringing up the point that people can be so sleep deprived that it's hard to take that time that they might need if they're having people at their house and all that. And I think it's a wonderful point.
So really you need somebody who can take charge and say, all right, we're going to give you this hour when you can go in your room and lie down if you want. Or we'll make sure that nobody is going to call, after such a time in the evening that you have this time to rest and help them catch up on sleep.
I think you're right. I think it is important to tell the mourner that they have permission to take a nap if they need to. Absolutely.
It's hard when you have everybody there.
I have a question. Would it be different the way you respond to someone if it's a sudden, unexpected death? Or if it's a person that's very young, when nobody has any idea that this was going to occur, rather than someone who has been ill and who people are expecting death?
Well, the most of what we communicate is through not our words at all. I'm sorry, thank you. The question, that's going to matter, is there a different type of response if it's a death that happens quickly, unexpectedly, or versus a death, or if it's a younger person, or a death that is versus a death that is longer in progression and process leading up to it. So my response to you is that most of what you communicate is actually through your body language and your affect, and so being present and caring about them is the most important thing you can do. How you say what you say will depend on the person and what you know about them and the cues that you're watching with them. Sometimes there just are no words that the person can't say. So you say just enough to make the connection and let them know you're here with them. I've actually dealt with both of those scenarios, and they have different ramifications for the mourner. I don't know if there's any difference in terms of what the support people can say in terms of the different, saying different words. I'm not sure if there's, I don't think that there's a different way of being just because the loss is different. I think there's more to take into account if it's a younger person, if it's someone that it's going to be devastating in ways that are hard to rebound from, quickly. But I don't know if there's a different response. I think that presentness, being there, taking your cues from them is the best you can do.
I'm interested in knowing what does a person who has just lost another person do immediately? In other words, who makes sure that there's shmira over the body? Or who does organize the meal after the funeral? So I was just curious to know if you could talk a little bit about that.
The question is, what happens in terms of logistically and who helps coordinate right after the death with shmira and with meals and all that? What are the mechanisms there?
There's really so much for us to learn, and we've been at this for years and years and years, right? Because we've been attending Shiva. So I really appreciate all of the questions. There's so much for us to look at. So right immediately after the death, up until the burial, is a unique time. And Judaism recognizes that you're in a unique state, and it has a name. Oninut is the name of it, and your task is to get to the funeral with the arrangements made. That's your task. You have no other responsibility, and people should pretty much leave you alone to get that done and not be giving you calls of condolence at that time. And that's something that we work out amongst ourselves in terms of what sort of community are we? Am I someone who really should be calling and saying, I will walk the dog, I will take care, I will come in and make sure your house is kept, or not, right? Or I'm going to refrain from bothering this newly bereaved family until after the funeral. We have to kind of size that up based on our relationships. And this is an example of the halacha is less important than the practice. The practice is you need space. The halacha is do not contact people who are in this stage. We don't really live in a world where that's helpful. So it's more helpful to know our place so that we can reach out and be helpful if we think that we have a close role to play. What does the family then do? The more we can have arrangements made in advance, the better we are when we're in that situation. Adrian was speaking before we began today about the many, many, many decisions in all of their details that we're. I'm sorry?
Your elbows on the mic.
Oh, the many decisions that we're asked to make at a time when we don't know. I mean, we don't even know if we'll sleep ever again, if we'll ever laugh again. And we're being asked to choose from an array of caskets, for example, right? So the more we can have settled in advance, the better we and our loved ones are. That's first of all. But there is still what to do. There are still plenty of questions that you'll be asked, and you do your best to get through them. And Alyssa and I are very much on call during that time, and so is Sarah. So Shmirah, watching the body, watching over or sitting in the area where the body is. It's usually in something and not just right there. But however it is, it's one of the things that Jews have traditionally done, that we provide a presence, a sitting presence, so that the body is not left alone. So we have an online scheduler, and families that ask for Shmirah, we send it out with the information about the death. And then we try to help by making some calls as we monitor what's covered and what's not covered. This is something that we actually struggle with. We have a couple of community members who take it upon themselves to do this difficult mitzvah at the most difficult hours, like midnight to 2 a.m. or 2 to 4 or 5, something like that. We have some members who, when they can, they really do that. But it's only a couple and they can't always. So it's not so simple. And as a community, one of the things that we're working on among the professionals of the different organizations is to see if we can come up with a community way to put the word out. Because even if it's just a couple other people in the community who would help, who see the value in that, you know, covering those shifts that aren't covered, that would be very, very helpful. Alyssa.
So actually, if you're signed up for the Federation's condolence notices, you get all of our condolence notices. And when there's a Shmirah link, that also goes out to everybody on the Federation.
So Alyssa just said that those who get the JFM's announcements will also get this information, because whatever we have put out, like a need for Shmirah, will come out through those emails. Is that correct? Okay. So that's Shmirah. Another thing that's super, super helpful that I understand used to be a part of the process and kind of fell by the way in many cases was to have a point person. And so that's one of the changes that we will want to make, so that the family has somebody who is handling arrangements, and we and the community can be in touch with that person with questions like, how do I sign up to bring dinner? How do I know what to do? Am I supposed to serve them or not? Do I clean up? Do I need to bring the plasticware? Are there things there already for me to use? Am I heating it? All of those things we will deal with, so the family only needs to talk to one person. And we have this wonderful team of members who is willing to step in, or people in this group who are willing to step in and act as that person on behalf of the synagogue, because not everybody has a point person, okay? But getting comfortable with the notion that somebody can do this for you will be significant for us. It's actually a gift to the community to be needed, or to need the community is a gift to the community, but it's a change in mindset. So you probably remember days before when it was a given that there was a contact person, but now there sometimes is and there sometimes isn't. So that'll be a significant piece. And then we'll provide information through that person, and also through some online resources that help us all know what are the eating needs, when would they like to eat, what do they like to eat, right? And I mean, the days are gone when we want to eat white food and some fruit for 6 nights, or even one night for dinner, right? So, you know, maybe you're a family that likes fish, maybe you're a family that wants chicken, whatever it is, we'll be able to be much more focused on helping you to put nutrition in your bodies. Does that answer? Yeah, okay.
A couple comments that came through, thank you for everyone who shared comments, is that to note that Shiva is not confined to just meal times, but happens all day for a week, and that some people find the individual times with friends during the day especially helpful. Thank you for that comment, Francie. The friend, is there a meaningful nonverbal response that doesn't involve touching instead of verbal greeting? We've seen people place their hands over their heart. I think that's a great comment, and this relates to the question earlier about COVID and how things are different. If we can't see our faces, how do you communicate that you're there, present? And so yes, find ways of expressing how you feel through your body language. That sounds wonderful, to put your hand over your heart or to, whatever it might be. And not everyone wants to be touched, that's true. If the person does feel comforted by touching, a hug or hand on the shoulder can help, of course. So I don't have a list of things to do, but I think I would encourage you to find a way that does work for you, that can convey how you feel if you have a mask on, especially. We have to be creative here to adapt. Any other questions? Yeah, Leslie.
If you come for a visit, should a visit during the day, would it be trying to bring something? It's like a little, I don't know, like some nuts or some food or something like that, or is that not?
Well, I think especially during the day, I think the concern, so the question is if someone visits for Shiva during the day, is it okay to bring, an item, a food item or whatnot? I think the concern about the food item is that, especially at the dinner hour, when people come, that it becomes more of like a social gathering. It takes away from the purpose of it being Shiva. I think I feel uncomfortable going to a house without bringing something. I know it'd be hard for me to do that. I think it's okay to bring food during the day. I think, you don't run that risk of it being social hour. That way it's more about the giving. So I think that's okay. Other questions? Yes, Rabbi.
I just say there's a difference between bringing a plate of cut up fruit and 2 forks and a banana bread that could go in the freezer, could be sliced to serve later, and so you, like Dan said, you don't want to make a social opportunity that's forced, that's a food experience, but bringing food is really okay. And even if you came in the evening with food, it's the difference between providing something for those who are helping to put it out at an appropriate time versus I brought this to add to the smorgasbord.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Or to point. We've spoken a lot about the Shivas centered around minyan times, which are also essentially meal times. And I'm thinking about that we actually sit Shiva for 7 days, all day long. And I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about the importance or approach to visitation during the day. I know people also need to rest, but also people are alone all day long with their thoughts and their sadness. So maybe you have a few words about Shiva in total.
Well, I think there's a larger question about, does the mourner want people to arrive or not? And I think as a community, as we continue to figure out exactly how we're going to be doing everything, making sure there's a way to communicate that. If a mourner is welcome to receiving guests during the day, or if there's hours that they want to receive guests or hours that they don't want to. But I agree with you that we shouldn't confine our support just to, give it, just say hours in the evening or whatnot. We should be flexible and available for people when they need it. If that's during the day, then that's great. I think having the quieter time to be present with someone offers a lot of opportunity for authenticity that you might not get in the evening. So I think that's valuable.
So we're dealing with human beings and a community. And so it needs to be a process that involves a lot of conversation and a lot of really seeking to understand who we are and how we can best do this. And so we're gonna stop here because we have 2 sessions more for these kinds of questions to come up and for us to really work through that, right? So this is not a, there's a change, here's what it is, here's why. It's we want to be able to serve with a greater repertoire. What are the ways in which we can work that out? Okay, so to be continued. Nancy Feingold is here and Bob Factor is here. They are two of the others who will be helping to facilitate the upcoming conversations, which I very much look forward to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Daniel, for a really intriguing presentation and I think a needed presentation.
Of course.
I thank you all for coming, those who zoomed in. Our next presentation will be December 19th. Our next Kolot Kehilla.
Okay, I would also,
Kolot, and then the sessions on this topic are not going to be Kolot, just to be clear about that.
And that will be December 19th, and Felice Rudin will be, Boris Rudin will be discussing a major problem of Wisconsin. I don't know, there's been, if you've been looking at Facebook or some of the other things, we are 40 of the 50 counties in the US with the highest binge